Here we go! Oh my God! Ow!
We're going to the powder bars.
Breaking news from deep within the swamps of Louisiana, where the legend of Shelby Stanga took root, then vanished. For years, fans tuned in to see the man they called the Swamp Man wrangle ancient logs, battle venomous creatures, and deliver stories so wild they blurred the line between fact and folklore. But then, he disappeared. No warning, no goodbye, just silence. Was it a freak accident, a deadly encounter in the wilderness, or a battle behind the scenes that Shelby kept hidden from the world? Rumors began to swirl, death hoaxes, lawsuits, backstage betrayals, and now, after years in the dark, the truth is finally surfacing. From national fame to personal fallout, this is the full story of Shelby Stanga, his rise, the controversies, and the tragic unraveling of one of reality TV's most unforgettable personalities. Long before he became a reality TV icon, Shelby Stanga was just a boy lost in the swamps of Louisiana, literally and emotionally. Born on January 17, 1960 in the vibrant but chaotic city of New Orleans, Shelby didn't have the kind of upbringing most people imagine. His father was absent. He was raised solely by his mother, deep in the wild terrain that would one day define his identity. But instead of being a tragedy, that absence sparked a connection, one between Shelby and the untamed world around him. While other kids were in classrooms, Shelby was knee-deep in mud, learning to survive with only nature as his teacher. He wasn't just playing in the woods, he was becoming one with it. At just 16 years old, Shelby took his first logging job, hauling swamp wood for local contractors. But for Shelby, it wasn't just about making money. It was the thrill, the rush of diving into danger, of doing what others couldn't or wouldn't. Locals quickly noticed the wild-eyed teen who could outwork men twice his age. He wasn't just skilled, he was fearless. The swamp, with all its snakes, snapping turtles, and secrets, became Shelby's sanctuary. His work wasn't pretty, but it was real. And in a world that too often overlooked the blue-collar grind, Shelby was quietly building a reputation as a man who didn't flinch, didn't quit, and didn't care about the rules of the normal world. That fearless kid would soon become a television phenomenon, but not before paying a steep price for the lifestyle he loved. In the early 2000s, reality television was booming, but no one expected a wild logger from Louisiana to become one of its most magnetic stars. Yet that's exactly what happened to Shelby Stanga. It began quietly, just another hard-working man with a chainsaw and a mission. But his first brush with television came on the survival show Man vs. Wild, and producers immediately noticed something different about him. He wasn't acting, he wasn't performing. Shelby was just Shelby, raw, eccentric, and unapologetically authentic. That authenticity caught the attention of the History Channel, and in 2008, they gave Shelby a spotlight on their new series, Axemen. It was supposed to be about logging, but what audiences couldn't stop watching was him. With his long hair, deep southern drawl, unpredictable rants, and daredevil stunts, Shelby stole every scene. While the other loggers worked by the book, Shelby tore up the script. Whether he was navigating swamp waters filled with snakes or wrestling sunken logs from the muck, viewers were glued to every moment. His segments felt less like work and more like legend. Before long, Shelby wasn't just a cast member, he was the show, so much so that History Channel gave him his own spin-off, The Legend of Shelby the Swamp Man. It was a fitting title. Shelby wasn't just a logger anymore, he had become a myth, a man who seemed immune to fear, addicted to danger, and endlessly quotable. And while America laughed, cheered, and followed his every move, very few realized that the spotlight came with a shadow, one that would soon stretch long over his future. As the cameras kept rolling and Shelby Stanga's face became a staple on American television screens, few fans realized just how toxic things had become behind the scenes. To the outside world, he was thriving, headlining episodes, leading spin-offs, and becoming the lifeblood of Axemen. But fame, as it often does, came with a price. According to Shelby himself, the cracks started forming early. What began as a handshake deal and an exciting opportunity turned into something more rigid, more corporate, and ultimately more exploitative. After 10 grueling seasons and 163 episodes, Shelby shocked viewers by announcing he was walking away. The initial reports pointed to health concerns, but the truth hit harder. Shelby accused the production company of breaking their word, promising a certain pay and not delivering. For a man who'd always lived by honor, grit, and straight talk, this betrayal was unforgivable, and so he vanished from the spotlight. No farewell episode, no press tour, just silence. Fans were stunned. The internet swirled with rumors. Was he sick? Had he been fired? Or worse? Meanwhile, Shelby returned returned to what he knew best, logging off camera, far from the studio lights and scripted chaos. But the show wasn't the same without him. Ratings fell, enthusiasm waned. Eventually, even the producers had to admit it. Without Shelby, Axemen had lost its soul. In a last-ditch effort, they brought him back in a new spin-off, but things had already changed. The damage had been done, and as Shelby re-entered the swamp, a storm was brewing, not just on screen, but in his personal life as well. When a man like Shelby Stanga disappears, people start to talk, and that talk quickly turned dark. Whispers of tragedy began echoing through fan forums and YouTube comments. Rumors spread like wildfire. Had Shelby been fatally bitten by a venomous snake? Did he drown while searching for ancient logs in the swamp? Some even claimed a snapping turtle took him down. No proof, no confirmation, just eerie silence. The idea of Shelby, the indestructible swamp man, falling victim to nature felt unthinkable. But that's exactly why the rumors took hold. It wasn't just gossip, it was panic. Shelby wasn't just a TV personality. He was a symbol of survival, of fearlessness, of raw grit, and suddenly, he was gone without explanation. Fans already reeling from his exit were blindsided. Major blogs picked up the story. Has Shelby Stanga died became a trending question. The speculation hit a boiling point. That's when Shelby, ever the straight shooter, broke his silence. No PR statement, no carefully crafted video, just a message loud and clear: he was alive. He had indeed been in an accident, but nothing fatal. He was recovering, still kicking, still very much the man people remembered. The backlash, however, was now aimed squarely at the production team. Why hadn't they addressed the rumors sooner? Why let fans twist in fear while Shelby's name trended alongside R.I.P.? The silence from the producers only added fuel to the fire. Shelby may have survived the accident, but the trust between the show and its audience had been deeply wounded. And for Shelby, the line between reality and television would never be the same again. Beneath the wild storytelling and larger-than-life antics, Shelby Stanga's daily grind was anything but entertainment. It was a dangerous dance with death. While TV producers showcased the thrill of the swamp, they rarely captured the sheer brutality of Shelby's reality. This wasn't stage drama. It was the kind of work where one wrong move could end your life. Day after day, Shelby dove into murky waters weighted down by over 100 pounds of lead strapped to his body. His steel-toed boots and hard hat, the only buffer between him and the unseen horrors below. He wasn't just swimming, he was blind feeling for massive logs buried 6 to 8 feet beneath suffocating mud. And what made it worse, nearly every dive came with a haunting statistic. According to Shelby, every load I drowned 3 times. The swamp wasn't just a workplace. It was a predator. Snapping turtles the size of truck tires, venomous snakes, thick currents, and zero visibility made every trip a gamble. More than once, Shelby nearly lost his respirator after it was ripped from his mouth by underwater branches. In those moments, survival came down to seconds, but that didn't stop him. When he located a log, it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. He had to hook it to a crane, drag it out, and pray it didn't shift and crush him in the process. These weren't just logs. They were 3,000-year-old giants that had absorbed minerals from centuries in the swamp, turning vibrant hues of red, blue, and green. Worth thousands to furniture makers, yes, but to Shelby, they were something more. Proof that he could do what others couldn't. Proof that the swamp, with all its teeth and traps, hadn't beaten him yet. And as viewers cheered him on, they had no idea just how close Shelby had come, again and again, to never making it back. Of all the stories surrounding Shelby Stanga, one stands out not for its danger, but for its symbolism. A haunting, unforgettable tale of persistence known simply as the lost log. It wasn't just another piece of timber. This log became the embodiment of Shelby's obsession, a white whale buried in the swamps of Louisiana. Years ago, during a standard logging haul, Shelby lost a massive ancient log in murky waters. Most would have written it off, chalked it up to the risks of the job, but not Shelby. That log haunted him. He searched the swamps relentlessly, diving day after day in the hopes of reclaiming what was lost. Fans didn't know it, but this wasn't just about money. It was personal. That log was a challenge from the swamp itself, a symbol of unfinished business. And then years later, on a random outing, Shelby spotted something, half submerged, caked in mud, nearly invisible. He dove, he fought, he pulled, and when it finally surfaced, there it was, his log. The very one he'd lost, long forgotten by everyone but him. Shelby's reaction was pure joy, not because of the payday, but because he had beaten the swamp. The moment was captured on camera, and for many fans it became one of the most iconic scenes in Axemen history. That log represented more than wood. It was resilience, obsession, closure. Shelby didn't just recover it, he proved that in a world of chaos, unpredictability, and danger, determination still won. And for the audience, that moment blurred the lines between reality TV and real human triumph. But behind Shelby's wide grin and swamp-soaked gear, something deeper stirred. If the swamp could take something once and keep it hidden for years, what else could it take? That question would become all too real in the tragedies that followed. While Axemen delivered jaw-dropping moments and adrenaline-fueled drama on screen, what unfolded behind the cameras was far more chilling. For all its entertainment value, the reality series came with a horrifying toll: real lives lost, real families shattered. And the tragedies didn't stop with Shelby's close calls. They began stacking up one by one in a series of fatal accidents that stained the show's legacy. First came the shocking death of Jimmy Smith, a fan favorite and owner of S&S Aqua Logging. In 2012, Jimmy passed away after a long private battle with cancer. Fans mourned the loss of the man whose no-nonsense style and intense work ethic made him a standout, but grief quickly turned to dread as more names followed. Bart Colantuono, a seasoned helilogger, died in a catastrophic helicopter crash while transporting logs. Witnesses said he dropped the cargo seconds before the chopper spiraled into the Oregon forest. Though many called him a hero, some suspected foul play, sparking a brief investigation. No charges were filed, but the unease remained. Then came Gabe Rygard, another prominent cast member whose sudden death in a 2016 car crash stunned viewers. He had been driving near his hometown when his vehicle collided with another. He was wearing a seatbelt. It didn't save him. Gabe, just 45, left behind a family and a business reeling from his absence. And the darkness didn't stop there. Van Huffman, a lesser-known but still vital presence in the Axemen world, vanished during a logging task in Alaska. Days later, his body was found in the wilderness. The show, once marketed as gritty and thrilling, began to feel cursed. Critics lashed out. Was the production pushing its stars too far? Were safety protocols being ignored in favor of spectacle? Meanwhile, environmentalists decried the show's glorification of destruction and danger. Axemen was no longer just a series. It was a graveyard of controversy, and the deaths of its stars made that grave all too real. For Shelby, who had outlived them all, the weight of survival grew heavier with each funeral. Fame had brought him into the spotlight, but it had also put him one accident away from becoming the next tragic headline. For a man who spent his life dancing with danger in the swamps, it wasn't a snake or a sunken log that finally landed Shelby Stanga in handcuffs, it was a tree. In 2014, Shelby was arrested in what many fans considered a bizarre twist to an already unpredictable life. The charge: felony theft. The crime: cutting down a cypress tree. But this wasn't just any tree. According to officials, the tree Shelby chopped had been designated as state property since 1963. It stood on land Shelby believed was fair game, but his neighbors thought otherwise. When they saw the massive cypress downed and gone, they were furious. The call was made. Authorities arrived. And for the first time, the legendary Swamp Man was behind bars. He spent a day in jail, booked not for violence or scandal, but for doing the very thing he'd done all his life: logging. Fans were shocked. Shelby, the man they saw fight gators and dive into Blackwater, was now the face on a mugshot. Shelby, the man they saw fight gators and dive into Blackwater, was now the face on a mugshot. His trademark wild eyes looked confused, like a creature pulled from his natural habitat and dropped into a courtroom jungle. But perhaps the most surprising part: Shelby never publicly addressed the incident. No interviews, no denials, just silence. To this day, many believe the charges were later dropped or quietly settled, but the legal stain remained. For some, it was a stain on his legacy. For others, it was just Shelby being Shelby, pushing boundaries, breaking rules, and refusing to live on anyone else's terms. Either way, it reminded the world that no matter how wild a man might be, the system always finds a way to remind him who's in charge. And just like that, the myth of Shelby Stanga grew even darker. Not just a survivalist, not just a swamp legend, but now, a man with a rap sheet. To millions of viewers, Shelby Stanga was a wild man, part logger, part entertainer, part walking legend. But once the camera stopped rolling, who was he really? That question lingered behind every outrageous episode, and for those who worked closely with him, the answer wasn't always simple. Behind the camouflage boots and exaggerated swamp tales was a man who blurred the line between truth and myth, sometimes intentionally. Shelby was notorious for his off-the-wall stories: gunfights with poachers, biting the heads off venomous snakes, climbing 100-foot cypress trees just to hunt snapping turtles for celebrity clients. To skeptics, it all sounded like made-for-TV nonsense. But here's the thing, there was always some proof. Photos of Shelby perched high in trees, bite marks and scars, Civil War-era coins recovered from the swamp. He had the evidence, and it shut most doubters down fast. Shelby wasn't trying to be famous. He was just trying to live the way he always had: off-grid, unpredictable, and deeply tied to the land. Even his underwater logging dives, where he strapped on over 100 pounds of lead to sink faster, sounded too extreme to be real until viewers watched him do it. And while some production crews found him difficult to direct, Shelby famously hated following scripts. They couldn't deny his magnetism. His real talent wasn't just logging, it was storytelling. Every sentence came with a laugh, a twist, or a threat of danger. And fans loved it because Shelby made them believe. He made them feel like the swamp was alive, that nature still held secrets, and that someone out there was still brave or crazy enough to live among them. He was chaotic, no doubt, but he was also honest in a way most reality TV stars never are. Shelby didn't play a role, he was the role. A man who never changed for the cameras and maybe paid the price for staying too real in a world built on illusion. When the final credits rolled on X-Men, it wasn't just the end of a TV show, it was the closing chapter of a dangerous, controversial, and unforgettable era. Shelby Stanga had become its face, but the series itself had become a lightning rod for criticism. Environmentalists condemned it for glorifying destruction. Industry experts slammed it for misrepresenting logging. And fans, once loyal, grew uneasy as one death after another piled up. Bart Colantuono, Jimmy Smith, Gabe Rygard, Van Huffman, all gone before their time. The once popular show was now haunted by loss, riddled with lawsuits, and weighed down by questions that would never be fully answered. Safety concerns, production pressure, emotional strain. Each episode was beginning to feel like a countdown. When the network finally pulled the plug, few were surprised. But what remained was Shelby Stanga. Bruised, battered, infamous, and immortal in the eyes of his fans. He returned to the swamp, to the solitude he always seemed to crave, away from scripts and spotlight. Yet the legend only grew. Reruns and spin-offs kept his name alive. Online fan pages debated his wildest stunts, and in a digital world full of influencers and filters, Shelby stood out as something rare, unpolished, unpredictable, and undeniably real. His legacy is complex. A man who entertained millions by being himself, even when it cost him. A survivor of both the swamp and the brutal machine of reality television. Some see him as a hero, others as a cautionary tale. But no one forgets him, because whether he's diving into muddy waters, getting arrested for cutting down the wrong tree, or simply shouting "Here we go" with reckless glee, Shelby Stanga remains one of the most fascinating figures TV ever stumbled upon. Axemen may be gone, but the swamp's most legendary outlaw still echoes in every murky river bend and every risky story yet to be told. Shelby didn't just leave a mark, he left a myth,